The race towards the 2023 presidential election in Nigeria is gathering momentum. The main opposition People's Democratic Party, PDP, may likely pick its presidential candidate for the 2023 general elections from the north, as stakeholders are set to zone the chairmanship position of the party to the south in a matter of weeks. According to this day Economic Intelligence Group, EIG survey, if the PDP zones the presidency to the north, they are likely to lose all their current southern states, essentially because of the mood in the south that Nigeria's presidency should rotate between the north and the south. Findings also reveal that the PDP might not make any appreciable gains in the north and middle belt states either, as the All Progressive Congress, APC, is still likely to sweep the north even with a southern candidate. Political calculations going on. It's a game of chess.
Political kamikaze.
Kamikaze.
I don't really understand what the PDP is thinking here. Since this zoning formula was actually a PDP brainchild, it seems bizarre to me that they would try and jettison it. I guess maybe the idea is that President Muhammadu Buhari, though he's northern, is not a PDP president. He's an APC president, so maybe they don't feel they have to, toe that line. But the zeitgeist is speaking clearly. The general clamor is for a southern president. So I find it very strange that PDP would drop the ball in this fashion. I thought political parties were in the business of winning elections, actually serving the people, or, well, it's usually not service, it's power. They're in the business of attaining power. Why on earth would they consider something like this? This analysis in this day, it's on the cover of this day, but that's Mr. Efeni's department today, I think is spot on. If they do have a northern candidate, the ball is dropped. I'm sorry, game over. I just don't see any advantage to that other than serving the interests of a specific few, which is unfortunate that the entire party appears to be held hostage by a specific few who are northern and who cannot wait. They know they cannot afford to wait. Maybe this is their last chance at the dance and they cannot wait for another election. But I just find it very strange that because of that, you jeopardize your chance to get back in the saddle. Because what I have observed with PDP, after ruling Nigeria for 16 years, PDP is not very good as an opposition party because they haven't, I guess, not been used to it. But I think they're trying to give themselves more experience in opposition at this point because they will stay in opposition come 2023. I completely buy into that this day analysis. I mean, it's just such a bizarre tangent to be taking us now. The country needs a southern president, period.
Dr. Bati?
Well, I think as we move towards 2023, there will be, various kinds of permutations, analysis about how the 2023 presidential process or electoral process should play out. And, that's not a subject anybody can run away from. And I find the story on the front page of this day quite interesting. A number of strands to it. The first is, okay, these two major political parties, how would they decide who their presidential, standard bearer will be in 2023 within the geopolitics of Nigeria? And in this, you can factor in ethnicity, you can factor in religion. I mean, we had a dramatic situation in 1993 where you had a Muslim ticket. I'm not too sure whether in Nigeria of today or of 2023, you can have a Muslim ticket. People have become more sensitive to issues of both religion and ethnicity. Now, in the Constitution, there is nothing that says you have to zone a particular position to any particular part of the country. But it was a handmaiden that was introduced by the People's Democratic Party as a way of addressing the concerns of Nigeria, concerns about equity, about justice, about federal character, about developing a sense of ownership, not just within the party, but also within the country itself. And hence, ahead of what we have today, the PDP had adopted the idea of rotational presidency, the idea of zoning. And the PDP, as a political party, had President Obasanjo 1999 to 2007. After President Obasanjo, power went back to the north when we had President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua of a blessed memory. And after him, through the doctrine of necessity and the circumstances of the time, power within the PDP came back to the South, and we had President Goodluck Jonathan. And then, of course, within the country itself, when we had the election, power went back up north with the election of the APC president in 2015, President Muhammadu Buhari. So to the general Nigerian, there's been this oscillation, north-south, north-south. So the general expectation of the average Nigerian is that in 2023, power should come back to the South. Not just the South, the people of the Southeast are saying that it should come to the Southeast, because since the return to civilian rule in 1999, no person of Southeastern extraction has been president of Nigeria. And that's why you had all that debate about zoning, competence, merit. But the dominant narrative in the southern part of Nigeria is that, look, it is the time of the South to take power back. And those who are arguing across the Niger, northwards, saying that, oh, it should be competence that should determine it and all that, they are countermanded with the riposte that, look, there are competent people in every part of Nigeria. And, you know, it's not that competent people are found in any particular place. But for developing a sense of ownership, a sense of belongingness, of equity and justice, every Nigerian should be good enough to be president of Nigeria. Now back to PDP, the other strand, is that what the report is saying simply in this day today is that this is a subtext of the politics within the PDP itself and the impasse within the party and the conflict that we have witnessed between Governor Nyesom Wike of Rivers State and the incumbent chairman of the party. However, southern governors, the report also made clear, whether they are PDP or they are APC, they had a meeting recently during which they now issued a communique in which all southern governors, 17 states, resolved that the presidency of Nigeria in 2023 should come to the South, not to the North. So if the PDP, in terms of its own internal arrangements, now decides to appoint a southerner as chairman of the party by simple convention, then it means the presidential candidate will be brought from the north, or maybe north central, northeast, northwest, and that, which is the import of this day story, will automatically alienate first the governors of the South, second the governors, the people of the South, who think that in line with the principle of fairness, the presidential position should be zoned to the South. However, if the PDP decides to zone the presidency to the North, that will automatically give an advantage to the All Progressives Congress. The All Progressives Congress may then decide to pick its, candidate from the South. And you could find the people of the South supporting the APC. Then it becomes almost an automatic victory for the APC in 2023. That's the bottom line of the analysis in the This Day newspaper front page by the This Day Intelligence Group. However, is it casting gold? Nobody knows. But I think the debate, in my view, is very useful. Wherever the president comes from, we all must know that Nigerians are very sensitive about the balance of power, about equity, about justice. And those who are saying, oh, power must still stay in the North, that would practically mean that power will remain in the North for 16 years, unbroken years. And that may not appeal to other stakeholders within the system. You made a point about the PDP, looking at living up to expectations as a major opposition party. You may say it's early days yet, but these are very clear indications about the kind of politics that we may have in 2023. But whatever happens, Nigerians deserve the best person to be president of Nigeria. And we must keep stressing the point that it's the people of Nigeria who would ultimately determine the person who will be president in 2023. And it is important that the state, the government of the day, ensures the integrity of the electoral process so that it's the people's vote that will count at the end of the day and they will be able to make an informed choice. All we're talking about is political engineering. It's about justice. It's about equity. It's up to the PDP to decide to lose the election if they choose to. and it's up to the APC to come up with its own strategies. One politician that I work closely with used to tell me, well, don't blame the other party. Politics is about strategy. If you get your strategy wrong, you lose the election. If you get your strategy right, you win the election. So let's see the kind of strategies that will be brought to the table, not just by the PDP or the APC, but also by the other political parties, and let the people's vote count.
Right. 1 year, 2 years is a long time in politics. It's still 2023. I mean, let's see how it pans out. But one thing is certain. In all of this political engineering, like you said, Dr. Abati, where is the role of an average Nigerian? How, with the hopes and aspirations and the yearnings of an average Nigerian, be met by these politicians? Because they can play politics all they want. But when you check the papers this morning, the World Bank states in a report that Nigerians have more poor people than any part in the world. And we all know that poverty is an important ingredient for civil unrest in any part of the world. Just like we heard the story that happened in Guinea yesterday, another coup has happened. Why? Because the President Alpha Conde did not meet the yearnings of the poor people. And there were political disparities that led to the coup. And when you see what happened, people were celebrating on the streets of Conakry yesterday in Guinea.
Because they tried to sit tight.
Yeah, because he tried to sit tight. So in all of this, the people must matter in this conversation. So the APC and the PDP can do their machinations, but they must come up with somebody that is best in the interest of the people, that will address the concerns of the people, which are concerns about poverty, which are concerns about insecurity. The people want a country where you don't have to shut down the mobile telecommunication system because you want to fight bandits or terrorists, as the case might be. The people want a country where the schools are safe for children. They can go to school and come back safely. They don't go to school and start to pay ransom for that. The people want a country where they can pick up a car and drive from Lagos to Borno without fearing any kidnappers' attempt on their lives. So the people, most importantly, want a country that can reduce the number of open defecation in the world. Because it's so easy for us now to say cholera is ravaging Nigeria, it's killed more people than COVID-19. But we forget in a hurry, when Nigeria was declared the open defecation capital of the world, nobody said anything about it. Nobody did link cholera to the open defecation incident we have in Nigeria. But that's the linkage. So we want a country that is clean for all, that is safe for all, that meets all the indices of Human Development Index, which Nigeria scores very low on. For me, that should be the major conversation in 2023. But that's all on News Headline. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have Rotus, Aaron, Emmanuel to give us updates on Africa, global business and sporting activities across the globe. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Our dependable Rotus Adiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning to all our viewers. Our African business update today is primarily concerned with Guinea and the coup that took place. The Guinea situation calls into concern or into debate whether or not economic metrics really are felt by the masses, right? So look, as far and that's the main focus. Not really, the coup and the situation that led to the coup. According to the head of the junta that took over, says it's corruption and poverty. Guinea is a nation, an African nation, about 12.8 million population, who is blessed with natural resources. But unfortunately, the economic growth has not been felt by the masses, which is very interesting because in a moment, we're going to take a look at some of the economic metrics of the nation. Alpha Conde has, at least if you take an academic look, textbook look at GDP growth, has done well. However, it hasn't been felt. Guinea overtook Australia as China's main supplier of bauxite, which is an aluminum resource. Bauxite, and essentially they are now the major supplier to China. China has been one of the biggest sources of demand for bauxite. and they displaced Australia. The mining sector in Guinea grew by 18% in 2020, and that was even with the COVID pandemic. Economic projections for GDP growth in Guinea for 2020 was about 1.4, 1.5%. Guinea ended up growing by about 6% in 2020. However, they haven't really felt growth. If you look at other metrics, inflation is about 10.4%. Public debts to GDP, about 36.5%. They've had space to be able to borrow in order to try to fund infrastructure. And he has focused on infrastructure growth. However, there have been issues. I mean, agriculture is the main supplier of employment. They've got a high level of unemployment and a high level of female unemployment in Guinea. But again, okay, so let's take a look at the chart. Look at GDP growth versus population growth in Guinea. And so, I mean, look at this. The GDP growth, annual GDP growth, according to the World Bank, that's in blue. That's the blue bars. Population growth is in orange. So if you take a look, and this is we're starting from when, again, by the way, Condé, of course, the first democratically elected president since they got independence from France in 1958. He came into office in 2010. So you look at GDP growth for 2010, 4.8%. 2011, 5.6. It climbed again. 2012, 5.9. Then it fell. So between 2013, 2014, and 2015, GDP growth averaged about 3.4, 3.5%. So it fell. 3.9 2013, 3.6 2014, 3.8. Look at the jump in 2016 to 10.8%. Now remember, Condé was re-elected in 2015. He made a concerted effort to focus on the mining sector. So you can, mining, in fact, between 2016, 2017, I think the mining sector grew by about 50%. Lots of FDI came into the mining sector. Again, bauxite, aluminum, iron ore, gold, and other precious minerals. So you can see GDP growth spike to 10.8% in 2016. It was at it maintained its 10% levels in 2013, and then, I guess economic downturn. It fell to 6.3% in 2018, 5.6% 2019, and 6.9% in 2020. Now look at population growth. We talk a lot about comparing. Are you growing faster than your population? In orange, the orange bar at the bottom of the screen, you can see population growth has averaged about 2.2, 2.3, 2.4%. So 2.2% in 2010, all the way to about 2.7 in 2020. So if you take a textbook glance at Guinea, you will say that Condé has done well because the economy has been growing faster than the population. Let's take a look at another chart and take a look at per capita GDP. Now, I should add a caveat here. Guinea is one of the poorest nations in the world, and that is due to political instability. However, still, if you take a textbook look here, looking at GDP per capita in Guinea, under Condé, when he came in 2010, it's risen from, and again, this is a low number, the 1,653, that's kind of low. But still, if you want to look at it on a growth level, he's grown per capita GDP in Guinea from 1,653 per person all the way to 2,817. Now, again, a population of just 12 million people, you really should have higher numbers than this. But then it's grown. So the question now is, okay, well, if you're seeing GDP growth outpacing population growth, if you're seeing per capita GDP climbing, then what is the problem? Another thing is, if Condé, you have to talk about presidents and their term extensions. Remember what happened with President Obasanjo when he tried to run for a third term here in Nigeria. The West African region, I mean, for some, it has just the instability that the West African region has faced between August of 2020 and now. I think we've seen about 4 instances here. We've seen 2 in Mali. We've seen 1 in Chad. We've now seen this here in Guinea. And Condé, again, under controversial circumstances, amended the constitution to run for a third term. Apparently has cracked down on dissidents, cracked down on opposition. He's also, on an economic front, he tried to increase the tax brackets and tax revenue for Guinea. So taxes have increased. He reduced fuel subsidies, and I'm sure the Nigerian government will point to the unrest. Fuel prices have increased in the last few months. They've also increased taxes in order to bring in revenue. But they did this in order to clear the way for them to be able to borrow more. Remember, public debt to GDP is at 36.5%. So they had a bit of room to borrow. There's a new dam. I think it's about a 500 megawatt dam that they've built. There's lots of infrastructure investments coming into the country. But unfortunately, and this is where the discussion lies here, with all this growth that you've seen, there's still been unrest in the country, and political instability, corruption has just rendered it null and void. So you know, it's a situation now that is, I am sure you know, it's front page on this newspaper today. The continent's economic growth, does it mean anything? Does it mean anything if you cannot translate that growth to the man on the streets? The answer seems to be no, and it seems to render all these GDP numbers, if you take a look across the continent, it renders almost some of them useless.
Right, I mean, great point you made there. Yes, economic growth is good, but you see, let me interrogate those numbers you gave. You said GDP capital increase. What's GDP per capita? GDP per capita, simply GDP numbers divided by the population. And when you do that division on averages, it doesn't really turn out well. So I give you a country like GDP per capita of Equatorial Guinea. Because of its oil, it's got a very big GDP number and low population. You could get almost $30,000 GDP per capita in Equatorial Guinea. But a lot of people are living in abject poverty. That's just the case too in Guinea. 12 million population and a GDP that is a little over 10 billion. You could get high numbers, well over 2,000 thereabout. But a lot of people, but I think the numbers we should start looking at, Rotus, is Human Development Index, HDIs. What's the Human Development Index in Guinea? Formerly, it used to be 0.2.
It's pretty low.
Now it is 0.4. Another number we should look at was a number propounded by an Italian professor many years ago that I like, you know, when talking about economics, even more than the GDP numbers, because even Simon Kuznets, that propounded the GDP numbers, always said, yeah, they're not the real representation of the economy. A guy called Corrado Gini propounded something called the Gini coefficient. Check the Gini coefficient of Guinea. Very low, 33.7.
It's pretty low.
So when you see those numbers, those are the numbers we should look at critically. And the GDP will grow. You know, Guinea took a debt recently from China. Guinea borrowed ×2 of its GDP. They borrowed $20 billion in 2017, $20 billion for China, you know, to be able to show up infrastructure growth and the likes. That debt is still on ground. And you know what that debt has done? That debt has given China access to their bauxite mine, iron ore mine, aluminum mine, and other things. So Guinea will not be effectively able to reap from the fruits of the natural resource. So for me, in all of this conversation, I think the major one we should always look at is, yeah, we can look at the economic growth and all of that. We can look at GDP per capita. Yeah, if you have a high GDP, you have a low population, GDP per capita will go up. But Human Development Index, Misery Index, and Gini coefficients are numbers we should also look on when we put up economic analysis forward. Because it is Human Development Index that will really say if all your policies and your economic growth is translating the lives of people.
Well, let me put it like this. You know, each time we talk about statistics here, we always say, well, these figures are attractive, whether it's about Guinea or Kenya or South Africa or Nigeria. But how do those figures translate into prosperity for the average individual? I use a favorite phrase, how does it affect the spreading pandemic of empty pockets? And what we have seen in the case of Guinea is this disconnect between statistics and the reality on the streets. But the bigger issue, of course, is the incident that occurred yesterday, and I guess that's why you are focusing on Guinea. What would seem to be the collapse of the government of Alpha Condé, 83 years old. He started his career as an opposition figure, 1983 election, 1989 election. He was a major opposition leader to Lansana Conté, who was the president who later died. And then, of course, in 2010, Alpha Condé became president of Guinea, 5-year term. In 2015, he won a second term in office. But his problem began when in 2020, he decided that he would amend the constitution to give him another term in office. He didn't just want another term of 5 years. He wanted to change the constitution to a term of 6 years. And Guinea erupted in major crisis. There were protests in October, November. The referendum that was supposed to take place to amend that constitution and the parliamentary elections that were to take place were postponed for about 2 weeks. At the end of the day, the election took place. The African Union did not even send observers to Guinea. Now, he got into that position. And if you talk in terms of his legacy, you may say GDP figures, statistics that we even question was showing GDP growth, whereas population growth was down. The truth of the matter was that the major issue with Alpha Condé was not about how he was able to make a difference in the people's life. It was about corruption. His wife, his son, they were involved in iron ore scandals, bauxite mining scandals. Guinea, unfortunately, has the largest deposit of iron ore in the world, but that has not translated into prosperity for the people. So what you find under Alpha Condé, a man who came and said he will fight corruption, he will ensure prosperity, he will move Guinea forward, was a case of Alpha Condé moving the country backwards. And so it goes beyond statistics. And it shows that if you don't have good leadership, if you don't have political stability, then of course, all those statistical figures mean nothing in real sense. Because you have a legacy of tension, you have a legacy of negative disruption, you have a legacy of hate, you have a legacy of division within the country. And that's the chaos that Alpha Condé has left behind. This, however, does not provide any justification for what has happened in Guinea. Lieutenant Colonel Dubumbuya and his crew should be told in very clear, certain terms that what they have done is illegal. Unconstitutional takeover of power is unacceptable. They promised a transitional government, and I think that the AU, the ECOWAS, and the United Nations should go beyond mere condemnation. And ECOWAS, in line with its established protocols on democracy and governance, should make it clear to Dubumbuya and his crew of military coups that this is unacceptable, and everything must be done to ensure the safety, the protection of President Alpha Condé, who we understand, is in the custody of the coup plotters. And the Nigerian government has done very well by promptly issuing a statement to condemn the situation in Guinea-Conakry. No matter how bad Alpha Condé is as a person or as a leader, apparently he wanted to die in office because the plan was for him to spend another 12 years. But whatever may be his shortcomings, the situation in Guinea is unacceptable. And President Buhari and the president of Ghana, Akufo-Addo, they were the first two African leaders to speak up immediately. And I think that every other voice should be joined to theirs to condemn the slip into chaos and destruction that we're about to witness in Guinea-Conakry.
Well, when he rolled out the military for the last elections, I'm sure he didn't envisage them getting comfortable and deciding to take over. But you're talking about business routes, so I'll take the conversation back there. So the largest iron ore reserve that they have in Guinea is Simandou. I've been reading about that on and off for years. And with this story, I went and checked. It's been 20 years since this project has been built to revolutionize the iron ore market, the global game changer, and nothing has happened. Why? It all boils down to leadership, poor leadership. They have this massive iron ore reserve, but they lack the infrastructure. Apparently, all you even need is a shovel. It's just right there. They're just so blessed, but they have not been able to exploit it. Does that sound familiar to you? I'm sure it does. They just are not able to fully exploit their, bountiful natural gifts because of poor leadership. They lack the infrastructure. They don't have the rail. They don't have the ports. Even China, who wants to come in and heavily invest, has been hesitating for 20 years. Australia has a similar reserve called Pilbara, which is more modest than this Simandou. And they are saying that once that Simandou starts operating, that they're just done. But really, Australia is still a global player where Guinea is not. And it just says so much about Africa and our leadership problems. Then you have this type of mediocrity wanting to perpetuate itself. And like I said earlier about the zeitgeist, people always fail, or politicians fail, to read the zeitgeist, read the room. The prevailing mood of the day today in Africa does not support sit-tight presidents. It also does not support coups. In the 80s, I'm sorry to say, but by now, even in Nigeria, some people would have had a go in the 80s. But today, coups have fallen out of fashion. But similarly, sitting tight has also fallen out of fashion. When President Obasanjo tried it in Nigeria, he was humiliated. He failed spectacularly. So it's unfortunate that that was even attempted at a time like this. Politicians need to understand the zeitgeist, understand the mood of the people, and just give them what they want.
I hope Alisa Ouattara gets that memo.
Excellent points. I think we have a little. I think we have a little extra time. I wanted to throw something at the three of you. I'm glad Tundu just mentioned President Obasanjo. I also want to bring up President Kagame, who I believe Doctor said he's not, been a fan of his extended term over in Rwanda. But look at the growth in Rwanda. Just want to throw this out there as devil's advocate. President Obasanjo, personally speaking, in my lifetime, I think has been the most economically progressive president in my time. Maybe you can argue with that. He reformed pensions in Nigeria. He also liberalized telecommunications. The growth we see in telecommunications today is as a result of President Obasanjo. Can he be, and again, this is just devil's advocate, can President Obasanjo be forgiven for wanting to extend what he was doing by the third term? And also, let me juxtapose that with Paul Kagame. Kagame, Doctor has said in the past, a lot of people are not fans of his leadership there, but you can see the growth in Rwanda now. We talked about Lionel Messi when grow Rwanda, the investment coming into Rwanda. How do you three put that within context of presidents in Africa trying to extend their terms when they feel that they are making progress? Again, if you look at the textbook metrics of Guinea, for instance, with Condé.
I think we should deplore messianism, because there's this messianic temper that people use to justify, African presidents breaking the rules. Yes, President Paul Kagame may have been a successful president, but what he has put in place in Rwanda, using the justification of the post-Civil War, situation, is what you may call benevolent dictatorship. And the Western world, African analysts, political scientists, because of that, they justify it and say he's been able to bring stability and all of that. But what we must insist upon is that every leader that goes in there must play by the rules. You don't shift the goalpost. African leaders are always looking for one reason or the other to shift the goalpost. If you say, messianism is acceptable, okay, will Kagame live forever? The country is bigger than every individual. I think what I would like to see in Rwanda, as in other African countries, is, a president who can reproduce other leaders, create a system to breed a community of achievers who can buy into the national vision and who can take the country forward. We have seen sit-tight leaders in Africa before who were like Paul Kagame. But when they left office or they died in office, chaos followed because there had been no plan for the future of the country. The emphasis was on the future of the Messiah. So messianism is part of the major threat to democratic consolidation in African countries.
And for me, it depends on what metrics you're using to measure success. The person as an individual in isolation, or do you look at that one person as a link in a chain, their successors that they chose to replace them? Who did Obasanjo choose? And how did we get where we are today?
One quick point is, Rotus, I will go back to the facts. HDI numbers. Kagame might make a lot of noise, but he's not a success according to Human Development Index. His Human Development Index is 0.5, just like that of Nigeria. So it is not still trickling down in the lives of the people. It's cosmetic on paper, it looks good on paper, but I tell you, a lot of Rwandese, when you talk to them deeply, they would rather another choice. Trust me.
But it looks good also on the ground in Rwanda. If you look at Rwanda, the manufacturing sector has grown significantly. The housing sector has grown. But what I don't like about Rwanda, the few times I've visited the country, is that it's like a police state.
Obviously.
But in terms of achievement, he's been able, to transform that country. And that's what people praise. But to have a police state, at every corner you see a policeman, he's been able to enforce stability, unity, a sense of nationalism. Whether that will survive him, you know, is another question entirely. But in terms of what is obvious and the quality of life, I think he has achieved a lot.
Well, thank you, Reuters. This was fun.